My name is H.A. Goodman, and I'm an author, columnist, and journalist. And to read my writing and to see my latest CNN appearances and my MSNBC and RT appearances, you can go to hagoodman.com. My link to RT's Crosstalk is below. Thank you so much for the kind words. And I have an article out in the Daily Caller. President Trump should pardon Julian Assange. So please share that article. And also, there's a fantastic op-ed piece in the New York Times titled "Why the World Needs WikiLeaks" by Sarah Harrison of WikiLeaks. So please, please, please share that article, that New York Times article, with everybody you know on Facebook and Twitter. Please do that. If you care about WikiLeaks and if you think that they've positively impacted your world and American society, which they have. I'm going to explain right now why Bernie Sanders defeats Donald Trump in 2016 and in 2020. When you look at the fact that both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, this is the first point. Name recognition, everybody knew who Donald Trump was. Everybody knew who Hillary Clinton was, obviously. So in terms of the polls, this is, by the way, a Hill article. This is all pertaining to a Hill article where Jane Sanders says absolutely Bernie could have beat Trump. And Bernie alluded to the fact that, yeah, he could have defeated Donald Trump. Jane Sanders, wife of Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, said Friday that she absolutely believes he could have won Tuesday's election if he'd been the Democratic nominee. Now, that's a Hill article. I agree 150,000% with Jane Sanders. She's 100% right. Bernie would have won. First off, name recognition. This is very, very important because the biggest reason Donald Trump won is not just that he wants to drain the swamp. It's not just that he was against the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is what Bernie was against. It's not that he's less hawkish than Hillary Clinton. That's two big selling points for Trump. And it's not that he spoke to people in the Rust Belt and in the Midwest, just like Bernie did. It's the fact that people knew who he was. So if you had that type of message with Marco Rubio or with Jeb Bush or with Kasich, they didn't have the name recognition of Donald Trump. When you look at Bernie Sanders, on February 15, 2015, and this is the main point. By the way, Bernie is not a socialist or a communist. So that's the biggest misconception. Democratic socialism is entirely different from communism or socialism. He doesn't want to nationalize industries. He wants to break up too big to fail banks, reinstate Glass-Steagall, institute a single-payer healthcare system, end perpetual counterinsurgency wars, ban fracking. These are all things that are good for the United States in the long term. Nothing to do with communism, but that's another side note. That's like 10 segments right then and there. But in terms of name recognition, this is why Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC did not want Hillary Clinton to debate Bernie Sanders in enough debates, because the more people were given a chance to listen to Bernie, the more people of all different demographics chose Bernie Sanders as opposed to Hillary Clinton. First off, when you look at February 15, 2015, in the Democratic, this is the HuffPost pollster 2016 National Democratic Primary, and this relates to beating Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders is at 4.4% in the polls, February 15, 2015. Clinton has a 59.6% lead. She's at 59.6%, a commanding 55% lead. She lost in about a year, a little bit over a year, a 55% lead to Bernie Sanders. If you go ahead on April 19th, and there are some polls that showed them tied, but in an average of polls, Clinton was now at 49.8% in the Democratic primary, and Sanders was 43.4%. They were only separated by 6 points or so. The reason this is important is because you had Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the DNC completely favoring Hillary Clinton. The Washington Post, Slate, TPM, the Daily Beast, she had they were entire public relations firms, essentially, focusing on how Hillary was qualified. You had James Comey saying that, well, you couldn't find intent. So with all her advantages, she still couldn't overshadow the rising popularity of Bernie Sanders. How does that relate to Donald Trump? Donald Trump had a populist message. His populist message is what enabled him to win. He was a populist, even though he gave Hillary Clinton $100,000. So to my amazing subscribers who happen to be Trump supporters, why on earth did Saudi Arabia give 10 to 25 million to the Clinton Foundation? And then why on earth did Donald Trump give $100,000 to the Clinton Foundation? He also gave money to Hillary Clinton's Senate campaigns. He also invited Bill and Hillary to his wedding. The point is, why? He's part of the establishment. So whereas he is more anti-establishment than Hillary, obviously, which is why he won, one of the reasons he won, he's still very much a part of the establishment. Now, he's doing some interesting things with the lobbyists, and then, of course, he's doing some things that have caused backlash in the media. The media still hasn't learned its lesson pertaining to Trump, which is why, if it's not Bernie Sanders, Trump is on pace to win in 2020 if it's not Bernie Sanders or somebody very powerful like Tulsi Gabbard or Nina Turner, somebody with a powerful progressive voice. But I will read you the New York Times. This is in June. So in addition to name recognition, you talk about Trump raised by June 2016, $67 million. Okay, so total raised $67 million. Trump didn't really need to raise a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money, but compared to Clinton's $334 million, Bernie Sanders did not have the advantages of Donald Trump, and he did not have the advantages of Hillary Clinton. He did not have name recognition going in, which is what I explained initially. Very few people around the country knew who the heck Bernie Sanders was. His sole advantage, the entire reason he elevated and surged in the polls, and this is something 538 and the Upshot and all these pollsters and these experts completely ignored. The entire thing the only thing that fueled Bernie Sanders was his message of change, was the fact that he wanted to break up too big to fail banks, was the fact that he wanted to ban fracking, was the fact that he brought up Sandra Bland, and he had Nina Turner and Dr. Cornel West and Killer Mike, and he voiced concerns and issues and specific solutions to problems that the country faced, from race to the environment to foreign policy. He wanted to end never-ending counterinsurgency wars. He fought for veterans. Donald Trump insulted John McCain. So we can go on forever about the differences between Bernie and Trump. But when you talk about Bernie Sanders, he raised $229 million. Zero name recognition, practically zero name recognition, was able to, if it were a fair primary, would have defeated Hillary Clinton. Because when you talk about Debbie Wasserman Schultz being forced to resign, if there's a Hillary bot watching, why was Debbie Wasserman Schultz forced to resign? For the same reason that Donna Brazile was forced to resign from CNN, because WikiLeaks emails showed not only foul play, but a completely unfair playing field that was completely skewed towards Hillary Clinton. Name recognition, Bernie Sanders was able to go from virtually unknown to everybody knowing who he was. He was able to raise $229 million. He was able to outraise in January, February, and March Hillary Clinton, even with her super PACs working directly with her campaign. And in total, he raised $229 million. Trump raised $67 million. What took place when you have Bernie being able to overcome the fact that nobody knew who he was, and then you have Bernie raising more than enough money for a presidential campaign, a winning presidential campaign. If Democrats had picked Bernie Sanders instead of a person with 2 FBI criminal investigations that had the same favorability numbers as Trump, Bernie Sanders had the highest favorability numbers of anyone in 2016. More people in the country liked Bernie, and it had nothing to do with a lot of people not knowing who he was. The more you knew about Bernie Sanders, you could disagree with the man, but you knew he was honest, and you knew that he didn't insult anyone, and you knew that he wasn't playing a game or a charade. And that's $27 on average per person. So 229 million he raised. Trump raised 67 million. The reason Trump won is because once Bernie Sanders was cheated, you had a great many Bernie voters voting for Jill Stein and Ajamu Baraka. I voted for Dr. Jill Stein and Ajamu Baraka, and I hope that the Green Party and Jill Stein and Ajamu Baraka become major players and forces. They were already in 2016, but in 2020, I hope that they're even more powerful. But when you talk about the fact that Bernie Sanders was the epitome of change in 2016, the epitome of a very positive populist message that wasn't just the establishment disregards populism as, oh, well, it's those pesky citizens who are just upset at the establishment and the people who control everything. Bernie Sanders said, okay, the billionaire class is taking advantage of the country. The Make America Great Again people said, let's drain the swamp. But they were able to do that. They were able to communicate that political message because Hillary Clinton was there as the polar opposite of what they wanted to stand for. With Bernie Sanders, the whole drain the swamp thing, that wouldn't have worked out with Trump. Because all Bernie would have had to do in any debate is say, hey, the Clintons went to your wedding. You donated over $100,000 to the Clinton Foundation. You gave more money to Democrats in New York than even Republicans. You won't reinstate Glass-Steagall. You won't break up too big to fail banks. And whereas you're less hawkish than Hillary Clinton, you're still a Republican. So just, what was it today? Trump met with Kissinger and a whole bunch of other people. Today. So the point is, the contrast would have been, even with two populist messages, the contrast would have been, here is somebody who is not a billionaire. Here is somebody who has fought for veterans in Bernie Sanders, who wants to break up too big to fail banks, who wants to really take it to the billionaire class. Whereas Donald Trump is now, Donald Trump adopted Bernie's message. And that's the big thing. He was able to adopt Bernie's message because Hillary Clinton is the epitome of the establishment in every way. Hillary Clinton had 2 FBI criminal investigations where Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch and they lied to everybody saying, oh, well, what they were speaking about golf and Brexit. So there are a great many reasons why Bernie would have won. The 3 biggest reasons are the name recognition that Bernie Sanders was able to achieve in a very, very short amount of time. You're talking about over 30 years with Trump and Clinton. Household names. Nobody knew who Bernie was. In the span of 1 year, his message alone, bold, powerful, progressive message, was enough to catapult him into raising, the second point, a lot more money than even Donald Trump. So $229 million to $67 million raised. And then the third major reason why Bernie would have really defeated Donald Trump is not only the polls, you can say whatever you want about the polls, but early polls showed Bernie defeating Trump by over 10 points. Early polls showed Trump and Clinton in a neck and neck, where Clinton barely defeated Trump, and she hardly defeated any other Republican candidate also. But when you look at the fact that both had a populist message, Bernie's was more believable. And with Bernie Sanders, he stood for that his entire career. He was an independent. The fact that he was an independent would have helped him. Also, Democrats would have had to, if they were really serious about fearing Trump, would have had to rally around Bernie Sanders, or else they would have basically committed political suicide like they did with Clinton, if Michael Bloomberg decided to run or whatever. So people who say that Bernie couldn't win, they're really trying to either fool themselves or trying to justify a horrible candidate who failed miserably in Hillary Clinton. Give me your thoughts below. Name recognition Bernie Sanders was able to achieve in a very short amount of time. He was able to raise more money than Donald Trump and outraise Hillary Clinton for a good part of the Democratic primary. And his message of bold progressive ideas, breaking up too big to fail banks, ending perpetual wars, and his track record would have overshadowed anything Trump tried to communicate, and Bernie would have won. And for all those reasons and more, Bernie can beat Trump in 2020. If it's anybody else aside from Bernie, Democrats could very well lose in 2020. Give me your thoughts below. Thank you so much for listening.